Alrighty. So I just saw 28 years later, one of my most anticipated films of 2025. Having absolutely loved the original, as you know if you saw my review of it. I've praised it and ranked it very highly. 28 weeks later, which you may have just seen the review of, you may not have, but yeah, pretty good follow-up. So we skipped the months entirely and went right to years, so we didn't get no 28 months later for whatever reason. But I mean, it's been so long since the last film, it makes sense. So you know the drill. It's a new movie. I will be giving spoilers. You have been warned. If you haven't seen the movie and don't want it spoiled, don't watch this. Anyway, so what has happened in 28 years since the adventures of Robert Carlyle and friends? And, well, and essentially of Cillian Murphy and friends as well. I said Cillian this time, so my brain knows that it's Cillian Murphy, but I've done 2 reviews now where I've called him Cillian Murphy, and I don't know why my brain defaults to a soft C, but I made an effort to get it correct this time because I know... Anyway, it doesn't matter. So Cillian Murphy has, he's directed this one actually, or produced? Directed or produced? Can't remember. He's involved behind the scenes of this film though, so that's kind of cool actually. But let's get into the actual story of this film. So we've got a young boy who's watching Teletubbies, which is fun. That's delightful. He gets to see that creepy-ass baby son and those creatures jumping around. I don't know if it's like a nursery or a daycare or something. Well, not a nursery, but maybe like a daycare or like something like that, where there's a bunch of kids who look a little too old to be watching Teletubbies, to be fair. The nanny or aunt or mom or whoever it is comes in and shuts the door and tells everyone to be very quiet. You hear a bunch of noise inside and there's quiet and one little boy is like, "Dad?" And then the door flies open, a bunch of infected come in, blood flies everywhere. There you go. So that's fun. That's our little intro sequence. Then we're introduced to our actual characters, main characters. So the main character of this film is a young lad named Spike. Not James Marsters, but slightly younger. But, so he lives on this island that, I don't know the exact area of, I think is it Scotland? Can't remember, but there's like a path where when the tide goes out, you can actually walk across where there would normally be water. And when the tide goes up, it's an island. You can't get on or off it. So that provides a very good natural kind of barrier to protect them from infected. So they've been creating this little society. There's, yeah, Spike, his dad, his mom are all in there on that place, along with like other people. They have a watchtower and everything. It says there's only one path that goes directly to the entrance. They have like a guard tower up there with people watching it constantly. So it's pretty damn safe. Definitely safer than the mainland, which they make a point of letting everyone know. Okay, so basically, events of 28 days later happen, it progressed. Events of 28 weeks later happen, it progressed. And then they just sum it up in like a couple of sentences saying, yeah, basically Europe just pushed it off and now it's back on just Britain. So all that dramatic scene at the end of 28 weeks later with the Eiffel Tower and stuff is like a footnote at the beginning of this film so that I guess we can focus on Britain again, which, okay, that's a choice. I kind of would have liked to see more stuff happening in Europe, but that's neither here or there. We'll talk about that later. Anyway. So this kid is, our young man Spike, is going to go out onto the mainland for the first time with his father. And his mother, who's very sick and basically bedridden, is not thrilled about that. She calls the dad all the names in the book. But it's decided he's going. So they leave and he's been training with like bow and arrow and that. So in this stage of, 28 years later, that makes sense that they've run out of ammo, so they're using more medieval style weapons. So they got, the bow and arrow is the main thing. So it gives you range, you know, it's relatively quick to reload. It's about as good as you're getting. And also you can make the ammo a lot easier than making like gunpowder and bullets and what have you. So that's what they're doing. They go on to the mainland. They have their first encounter with infected that are fat and crawling. Like, they're not really mobile by any means. One of them's like the one that they see. The father is like, okay, Spike, there's your first kill. Go for it, buddy. Make sure you get him in the neck, because A, that's, you know, that's a kill shot, but B, it also severs their vocal cords so they can't call more infected over, which that's pretty clever. So that's kind of cool. That's something that, you know, you might not think of right away, so that's kind of neat. Anyway, he gets his bow ready, and there's this infected, this big, obese, infected, crawling on his tummy, and he's sucking up worms out of the ground. So, I mean, they have to eat, right? Like, at the end of 28 Days Later, you see them all starving, so they eat whatever they can eat, I guess. And these bigger ones, they can't really hunt down animals. They're kind of not the fastest, so I guess they just suck up earthworms. Anyway, nails the shot. It's delightful. There's another one behind them. That's great. Dad takes that one out, and then they stop at the field and they look and they see infected walking over kind of like the crest of a hill. And he's like, okay, well, there's one, there's two, there's three. Then they see a big one that's not twitching and walking all weird, and he's just kind of standing there. And the dad looks for a second, he's like, oh shit, that's an alpha. So they've essentially evolved, or maybe certain genetics in people have evolved to the point of making a superior infected at this point, which is a little bit more intelligent. It's larger by far, it's stronger. I don't know if the infected disease, you know, the rage virus made them bigger, or if it just, it's a coincidence that it's bigger ones. I don't know. Anyway, most infected you can take out with an arrow to the head or the neck or the heart, but this one apparently will take like a lot to bring it down. So that's not good. So Dad's like, okay, fun time's over. We're going back to the camp, or to the home island there. And they run and they're pursued into a building of some sort, like an old stone house or something like that. Bunch of infected are running through, and he's trying to push his son up into the attic, and they end up making it to the attic, which is good. And all these infected are rummaging around downstairs, like they're trying to figure out what the hell, where'd they go? He took out a bunch of them on the stairs too as they were coming up and everything, so that's fun. But unfortunately, they're kind of stuck there overnight. The tide is up. You're not going to be able to get back to the islands. So Father's like, all right, that's fine. We'll wait it out. It's all good. They look out the window and they see the alpha still standing there and whatnot. And it's like, okay, that's weird. And they see a fire in the distance too. And Spike's like, what is that? And he's like, that's a fire. He's like, okay, yeah, but like, is there a town out there? He's like, nope. He's like, oh, well, what's out there? He's like, listen, I told you, I don't know what's out there. I haven't been there. Anyway, that's fun. They start heading back the next morning. Tide is partially down. It's like knee deep. At this point, they're being pursued again by infected, including an alpha. So Dad takes down a bunch of little ones, and they start running through the thing, and Alpha's running behind them, and you can see, like, here's the path, you know, the island, the mainland, here's those two, and the Alpha's like catching up. Anyway, he's screaming. The guy at the gate with like a big like ballista type thing ends up shooting the Alpha in the chest with like a flaming bolt, and they make it inside, and Spike is kind of choked because during the whole house situation and stuff, and when they were being chased through the woods, he fired a couple shots that missed his targets, and he froze and was scared. But he did kill the one at the beginning there, so I mean, he did get the kill. He might have got another one too, I can't quite remember. Dad was doing a lot of the heavy pulling there in that one. But anyway, they go in. There's a big celebration and whatnot, and they throw him up on a chair, like, you know, good times. He's a jolly good fellow type deal, whatever. And at one point, Dad sneaks off with some woman, and little Spike sees him cunninging her. That's not a word, but whatever. Anyway, that's good. So he's pissed off at his dad. He goes up to his mom, or he goes home and he talks to, I guess, is it his grandpa or something, or his uncle, who he met. He says, okay, so how was your time on the mainland? Like, tell me, you know. And he's like, okay, well, you know, tells him exactly what happened. He's feeling guilty that his dad is kind of building him up to have done more than he feels that he did. And the uncle or grandpa or whatever it is like, okay, but I mean, you still did pretty well. I mean, you're being too hard on yourself. You still went out there, you came back, you did kill something or some things, depending, I can't remember. So good on you. And then he brings up the light. He says, yeah, I saw fire. And the older guy, I'm going to call him the older guy because I don't know exactly what the relation is. He's like, oh, that must be Dr. So-and-so. I was like, what? Yeah, he's not a doctor in the sense of, well, I mean, he maybe was a doctor, but now he's kind of like lost his mind. He's insane. So that's fun. I think, is it Clayson, the doctor? I think so. I'm going to call him that, and if it's wrong, I'm going to look like an idiot for the whole video, but I probably do anyway, so let's just roll with it. So Clayson, he says, is... I really don't feel that that's right. Doesn't matter. Yeah, why am I doing a video when I don't remember their names? I don't know, because I just saw it and I wanted to talk about it, so shut up. I should shut up. Anyway, lo and behold, he kind of half-assed tells him enough to kind of know that there's a doctor there. And he's like, oh, well, why is Dad not telling me there's a doctor there? And he's like, well, if your dad's not telling you, it's probably for a reason, so I'm not going to say anything. That's for you and him to discuss. He's like, well, why can't we take Mom to that doctor? Yeah, and he explains, yeah, he's crazy. Like, it's not like a doctor. He was, maybe, in, like, the previous world, but at this point, he's gone. Anyway. Spike is clinging on to the fact that, you know, hope is hope, right? You never know. Maybe he's not crazy, whatever, so. He goes and he says, listen, why don't you go to the party and I'll watch Mom? And the old guy's like, oh, alright, cool. And he's like, for something, there's like a little joke of that. And he goes up and lies with Mom, and the drunk dad comes in and flops down in the bed, and Spike's pretty not impressed with what he saw earlier, and there's like a brief confrontation in the hallway when they both leave, where Spike even pulls a knife on his dad. And his dad's like, whoa, what the hell? And he grabs the knife quickly and gives it back to him, like, dude, you're not gonna... Good attempt, but clearly I could disarm you, whatever. Anyway, he goes downstairs and starts making food, and Spike goes in and he's kind of like, do you want Mom to die? Like, what's going on? He's like, that's a fucking horrible question. Why would you say that? It's like, if she dies, are you gonna be with that girl? He gets a little smack across the face for that one. Dad's not happy with that. Anyway, Spike decides to take it upon himself to later on bring his mom to the mainland to find this doctor. So that's when the story really sets off. I took too long explaining the intro and all that, but whatever. Anyway, they cross, and the mom she's got cognitive issues, to put it politely. So she kind of drifts in and out of having episodes. Like, occasionally she thinks that she's talking to her dad when she's really talking to her son. She kind of has short-term memory a little bit, like something's not right in her head. So they cross and they look over and she stops and she's kind of freaked out. She's like, this is the mainland. And he's like, yeah, we're gonna go see a doctor. She's like, no. Where's your dad? We gotta go back, like, right now. Anyway, convinces her that, okay, let's go see a doctor. So lo and behold, they go on an adventure to go find this doctor that he was told is crazy. Cool. Along their travels, they end up being chased by some infected thingies, and they get saved by this, I don't know if he's like UN or if he's just Swedish, but he's like a soldier from Sweden named Eric. who apparently his boat sunk on the rocks off the coast or whatever, and he makes a joke about like scotch on the rocks, and he's like, huh? No? Okay. Anyway, his Scotland, whatever. Anyway, he's a fun character. He's got a lot of he's got some good lines. He seems very frustrated with the whole situation, and even at one point he's like, why is she calling you dad? You know, like, I know probably on this island, you know, since everything went to shit, there's probably some inbreeding, but this literally doesn't make sense. And it's like, oh my god. Anyway, our good friend Eric, like I said, fun character, but they end up getting chased, and he shoots them down or whatever, and they find a train, and they get on the train, and there's an infected on the train that's pregnant. Yeah, we're going there. So this infected is like cognitive enough to be stuck between I should kill these people versus I need to have my baby. And the mom goes down and approaches the infected really slowly and holds out her hands, and the infected mom holds the hands, and she gives birth to this child, which doesn't appear to be infected. That's what they say. I mean, I don't know how you really know. Well, I guess the eyes would give it away, right? So the kid is like not infected for whatever reason. The infected mom appears to die at childbirth, which is a thing, I guess. So it's a good thing that they were around for the baby. Then she springs back to life, and Eric quickly dispatches her as she's about to lunge and take a chunk out of Mama there. Anyway, Eric is not having this. Like, he also mentioned earlier that basically he's stranded on the island, and Spike was kind of like, so is anyone going to rescue? He's like, no, it's quarantine, meaning you step foot on this island, you're stuck here. So he's kind of given up, and he's not taking any chances. He says, drop that baby right now, or I'll put you both down. And Spike's obviously like, it's not infected. You know? I'd kind of be on the side, like, that makes me an asshole, but I'd kind of be a little bit cautious like Eric too. Maybe not right away, like I'm going to kill it instantly, but like, let's evaluate this properly. Anyway, Eric's not taking any chances. He's dealt with enough. His whole squad who swam to shore with him is killed. He's the last of his squad remaining. Anyway, we find out that this pregnant infected is, I guess, the mate of one of the alphas. So this alpha comes storming onto the train and ends up grabbing Eric and ripping his head off, kind of Predator style, like the spinal cord comes out and everything. So that's unfortunate. Our good friend Eric is no more. You know, that's rough. And he starts coming after them and chasing them through the train and all this stuff, and he's looking at the dead infected pregnant one. He's like, okay, you're dead, what the hell? Obviously, I guess he wants his baby, maybe. I don't really know, but it's implied that he probably got her pregnant or something. So basically, the virus has evolved to the point of reproduction, like natural reproduction, in addition to contagious reproduction, that's kind of scary. That means they don't just die out like we thought they were. They can reproduce. Same with, you know, they can feed on anything as small as like even earthworms and sustain themselves. So they're not going away. In fact, they're going to be increasing in numbers, essentially. So that's a lovely little afterthought. Anyway, they are cornered, essentially, and the alpha's about to, you know, dispatch when he stops, and there's a little thing in him, and this man comes out covered in like a yellow liquid, and apparently he shot him with morphine, and that like subdues them significantly, like almost instantly. That's the doctor guy that they're trying to find this whole time, and the yellow stuff on him is iodine. So I mean, that's a cleansing chemical, so that makes sense. Virus, you know, can't really do anything with iodine, so that's cool. Anyway, he takes them into his his weird bone camp. So there's like a bunch of trees. You've probably seen pictures of this in like the ads and whatnot, and the trailer. Bunch of trees with like bones tied to them, and like a big mound of like skulls and like little skull talisman things and all kinds of weird tribal ass looking things. And so we're thinking, okay, so is this doctor actually insane? Anyway, it turns out that he's almost sympathetic a little bit, in the sense that like he understands that all these people were people, you know, each one had a life, a story to tell. So it's basically, this is his way of like giving tribute. He had taken Eric's head out of the Alpha's hands and brought it when he was like incapacitated. And then they take off, obviously, while he's still out of it, saying, yeah, let's get out of here before he wakes up. Anyway, back at the bone camp, he kind of explains the situation of why all this is, and he takes Eric's head and he throws it in this big vat of like boiling water to, I guess, boil all the skin and that off. And he basically cleans it and takes off the excess little bits of skin and flesh on it and gives it to poor little Spike, who, I mean, that would be friggin' kind of, like, the infected is one thing, but a skull of a dude that saved your life is kind of like, okay, that's weird. It gets better for Spike, don't worry. Anyway, he says, okay, listen, who was this? This was Eric, he saved our lives. Well, find a nice place for Eric on that mound. And he goes and he takes the skull, little Spike, and he puts it on the mound in the middle, and the doctor's like, very nice. And then he questions, Spike tells him about the baby, how it was like born of an infected, and the doctor's like, oh, I kind of figured that might happen eventually. Something along those lines might happen. Is that why you came to see me? Is it because of the baby? He's like, no, actually, it's about my mom. He's like, oh, okay. He ends up examining the mom and finding out she has cancer that has either spread from her body to her brain or her brain to her body. But like, not only is her brain incapacitated, there are lumps in her lymph nodes, on her breasts, etc. So she is not going to make it long. There's a moment, you know, well, it is the moment when it kind of sinks in, and she's like, I wanted to tell you, I wanted someone else to tell you, but no one would, and I kind of figured that's what it was, whatever. But you know, it will kill me, and I don't have long to live, so the doctor can't cure me, but he can help me, which we know what that means, right? So he sedates Spike a little bit, and the mom he like blow darts a little bit of morphine into Spike so he's not freaking out and panicking and crying and having an emotional crisis. The mom gives the baby and basically says, look after this baby and all that garbage, and doctor goes and takes her out very nicely with like sedatives. I think it must have been like an overdose of morphine or something, because she gets like the blow dart, and then he comes back with Spike's mom's skull, and he gives it to him, and clearly Spike knows that that's his mom, and he's coming out of morphine, and like, this poor kid, you know what I mean? That's gonna cause some serious trauma. Anyway, he takes it like a champ. The doctor says, find a spot for it on the totem, find the very best one. And he's being, you know, genuinely trying to be nice in his weird way. Spike climbs up the mound and puts it at the very top, facing the sunset, or the sunrise, and they watch the sunrise together, and blah 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 blah. There's another scene where they are, I guess he stays with this doctor for a few days or something. Eventually Alpha comes and finds him, and they quickly run into this like underground thing with a big metal grate that he has padlocks on. And the Alpha's trying to rip this off, and he can't. But instead he goes through the wooden roof or floor of this or whatever and grabs the doctor and starts pulling him, and the doctor is like panicking, and Spike grabs a little morphine thing off of the doctor's belt and plugs it into the Alpha, who goes limp, and the doctor's like, okay, thank you. You should probably leave. Which he does. So, kid leaves, makes his way back slowly to the encampment or whatever, but he doesn't stay. He leaves the baby at the gate, and the people inside hear the baby crying, and he leaves a little note for his dad saying basically he'll come back when he's ready, but he needs to stay out there a little longer. And his dad freaks out and like runs to the gate, and the tide is already up and his son's already gone, and he has a little conniption and he's freaking out. He's like, no. Obviously he wants his son back, you know what I mean? That's You know, despite their little fight, obviously he wants his son back. He knows that his wife is dead now, which is, that's not going to help either. His emotional state. You know, despite infidelity, that's he's still losing someone, right? Whatever. We get a scene of Spike fishing or cooking a fish and kind of living the good life on the lam there. On his own, by himself. Still practicing with arrows. There's a stretch of highway and like a rocky canyon that's going through, which is a really terrible spot to set up a camp. 2 directions, that's it. So that's not very bright, but anyway, he sees an infected around the corner and starts running, and he takes it down with the arrow. And then a bunch more come around the corner, which they usually do travel in herds. So he runs, then he realizes, he sees that the highway has like a big barricade of like boulders and rocks and shit, so he's kind of trapped. He ends up taking one down or something, and more are starting to come. And then this dude with like a little, he's like in a purple velour jumpsuit kind of thing. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just a ridiculous scene where that guy and his friends go fucking ninja and take out all these infected with like jumps and flips and like wires and different strange weapons. Like, they're having fun. Some of it almost reminded me of, if you've seen Attack from Titan, where they use like the wires and they like do, like, they launch themselves with the wires and like flip, and it's very weird. They end up dispatching everyone, and then basically it's implied that this guy is the kid from the very beginning of the film, who, because there's a scene that I didn't mention, of course, where he runs into a church and the father is in the church, or the priest or whatever, and he gives them a little gold crucifix and tells them it's basically just a rapture. He gets like disemboweled and dismembered in front of the kid, who obviously survived to be this person. I guess this is 28 years later, so that must have been at like when the infection first happened or something like that. Anyway, how I know this is because the cross that the priest gave him, he's wearing it, but it's upside down now, so it's kind of hinted that that's the deal. I don't know if his friends that are with them are the other kids that were watching Teletubbies, but it really looked like they were implied that they got all killed. But anyway, then he looks at Spike and he's like, ah, you're alright. You and I, we should be friends. And then the credits roll. Alright, cool. So, what did I think? How does this hold up to 28 days and 28 weeks? It's different. It's very... Oh man, I don't know how to explain this. Like, the first one was like bleak horror. It really went for that horror type style. Like, it was a lot, it was creepy. You know what I mean? There were scenes that were genuinely like unnerving. 28 weeks later did the similar thing on a grander scale to I would say a slightly less psychologically messed up extent, but still very good in its own right, in a different kind of way. This one, I don't know, like, I enjoyed it. I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy it, but it is very different in tone. There's like comedy in it, kind of, and they bring a kid, like a baby, into it, and I don't know if this is just me, but like, you know, sitcoms and whatnot, when they get to the season where one of the main characters has a baby, it's like, okay, they've run out of ideas. I don't want to say that that's the case, because this will probably play into the story more than it just being a baby. And to be fair, the whole movie wasn't based on like, oh no, the baby's crying, we gotta run. Like, it's just like, that's a thing that they found and it's part of the story. So that's fine, I guess. Eric was great. I liked Eric a lot. Foul-mouthed Swedish man. He was good. He saw his end pretty quickly, but yeah, he was enjoyable. The concept of evolved infected, like having an alpha, which, you know, like a wolf pack or a hyena pack, they have an alpha male or female, depending on what kind of animal it is. It's an interesting concept. I mean, it feels a little like what did that? I don't know, like Resident Evil, or no, what was that game? Oh god, where you're There's like the witch and that. I don't remember what that game's called, but it reminded me of that, where there's different like classes of zombies. Oh, and by the way, the Swedish guy actually does call them zombies. So we're really bridging that line, you know what I mean? Like, I call these zombie-adjacent films, but I mean, they're alive though, so it's not exactly a zombie, but he called it that, so there you go. That just cements it into that same genre, just slightly adjacent. Anyway, that's fun. What was I talking about before this? Who knows? Who even knows, right? Oh yeah, the characters were decent enough. The story was okay. You know, sick mom, kid taking it upon himself to try to save his mom. But ultimately, it's, you know, he can't because she's got cancer. So that's rough. It's weird because, like, I just saw it tonight. And at first I was like, oh, I didn't like that. And then I was like, oh, I did like that. And now I'm just like, in my brain, it's really going like, what did I really think about this movie? I mean, it's hard to rate something after one view, just coming out of the theater, especially for like a franchise that has had this big of a gap between movies. So, that being said, I still have to give it a rating, right? Oh man, this is going to be probably the most vague rating that I can think of. I'm not even going to use decimals. I'm going to make sure that I do not. What did I really think of it as a whole, as far as it being enjoyable, as far as it progressing the storyline and the world? I'm going to give it a 7, I think. A 7, because though it was very different from the other two, it's setting up stuff that could prove interesting down the line. Now, this was, in my opinion, the weakest of the franchise so far. One thing I don't really like is the fact that this movie was clearly a lead-in to the other movies. So it's like, yeah, you established your characters, yeah, you had some conflict, kind of like an origin story, essentially, like how Spike becomes a badass, loses his mom, is, you know, on his own, whatever. That's fine. And then they just end it with like the weird ninja guys. The like tracksuit wearing multicolored ninjas. It's like, okay. So I was also under the impression that Cillian Murphy's character Jim would be appearing in this film. I was wrong. I already gave you spoilers, so it doesn't matter. I was wrong. He's not in this movie as Jim physically there. But I believe he is confirmed for the later films in this new... I think it's going to be a trilogy or something? I could be wrong. But he is confirmed to return, I believe. But he was not in this one. So don't expect our buddy Jim. But we do have Jimmy, who's the weird kid from the beginning turned tracksuit ninja. Oh boy. Anyway, that's what I got for you. Should you watch it? I mean, it's out there. It's still enjoyable. Depending on how like diehard serious and how much you want the film to be like the first two in its darkness factor, it's not. It's not anywhere near as dark as those ones, but it's fun. It's more like I'm trying to think of a good analogy. It's kind of like how Alien and Terminator really went for that, like, kind of genuinely frightening vibe, in a sense. I mean, Terminator less so, it's like a robot, but still, like, the concept of, like, a killer that's, like, unstoppable with, like, horror-type suspense. That's what the first ones were more like, and this one is kind of like Alien Resurrection compared to it. Maybe not that harsh, but that's what I would compare it to. Like, I'm one of the few people that actually kind of don't mind Alien Resurrection, but it is, I understand it's a very big departure from the first two movies. But that's kind of what I would relate this one to. Or like the, I don't even want to say Terminator 3 because I liked Terminator 3 as well. It's like that. Let's say Alien Resurrection, that's a good comparison. So that's what I think this is. This is like 28 Days Resurrection or whatever. That's stupid. I'm going to end this now, but should you see it? Yeah, I mean, if you followed the first two, you may as well see this one and make up your mind for yourself. You could have a totally different view than I do. You might love it, you might absolutely hate it, or you might be like me and you're kind of undecided right now. You kind of are curious how they're going to proceed under this new sort of direction. But yeah, we'll leave it there. Check it out or don't. If you see it and you agree or disagree and you want to call me an idiot or you want to call me a genius, feel free to drop it in the comments. Oh my god, I'm fishing for comments. Okay, you know what? Deliberately don't comment on this, even if you want to. Just because that's cringy as hell, what I just did, and I apologize. Okay, we're ending this now. Take her easy. Bye.